Okay, you're good to go.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Do I have to enumerate the people that are here? Or
Yes, for the record, you do.
okay. For the record, Mary Lou Hewitt is present. Paul,
I'm present.
Grace.
Present.
Okay. Has everyone had a chance to review the LAR?
Yes.
Okay. I need a motion to approve the
I would like to
LAR.
make a motion to approve the LAR.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Mary Lou, aye. Grace?
Oh, aye. Sorry.
No problem. Okay, so the LAR minutes are approved as read. Okay, our first item is 492 Convent. It's continued. And who's representing? Okay.
Today, I'm representing the Office of Dust. My name's Cade Hayes. Jesus is out of town, so I'm filling in.
Okay, would you go ahead and present then?
Yes. From the comments from our initial review presentation, we rearranged the floor plan and elevation to meet some of those requests and suggestions. The changes is that the CMU addition got larger by 81 square feet.
Can everyone hear him?
Can you guys hear
Yeah, I
me?
can.
Okay,
Yeah, I can try to speak up. Apologies. So this page represents the last time we left off, and the image on the left, or images on the left, are the existing conditions. And the gray area shows a series of additions. We're still proposing to demolish the enclosed frame additions that limit the use of the structure and are not compliant to current codes in relation to health and well-being, fire safety. There's a lack of daylight, no egress from the bedrooms, inadequate structure for loads per code, and heights in the west areas are below 7'6". The image on the right shows our initial plan that we presented last time, which resulted in a motion for continuation to resolve or address the numbered items on this page, which are old versus new, windows, and the fireplace. So that's the addition that got bigger for what we'll see in the following page, and then the fireplace, and then the old versus the new. Our solution was to revisit the location of the specific program and use for the primary suite and bath, and to address directly the concerns stated in the initial review. The distinction between the old and the new. The existing adobe is proposed to be reinforced with the CMU bond beam here and added a parapet. We're specifying that the finished stucco would match the existing house, smooth white lime stucco and adobe construction for a weather-tight, seamless transition between the CMU structural reinforcement and the existing adobe wall below. Color, texture refer to what is original on the property. Door and window openings remain original, but to be outfitted with new wood frame and glass. The new addition is enlarged here to formally express the distinction between old and new, both in plan and elevation. It added 81 square feet from the prior proposal. And we're proposing that the wall height is up to 14 feet, which is lower than the neighbor's 16-foot wall to the south and just taller than the 13-foot wall to the north, both of which are on the property line. Window proportions on the north facade remain unchanged, and finished carpentry details will resolve our needs on the interior. And the fireplace is absorbed in the wall, and only the flue protrudes above the wall per code, which would be here. And so we're trying to keep these original unchanged there. And it was mentioned that we explore a differentiation between the old and the new, in this case, the addition. For practical concerns, we'd like to merge the new CMU bond beam and parapet that is primarily going to stabilize the wall and be integrated into the structure with a seamless stucco finish to match the existing home. We'd like a variance on the height here for the structure on the lot line to be at 14 feet above finished floor. And that would help distinguish the new addition from the existing adobe. The stucco texture would be different as it would be sanded. And then roof drains would be central to pipe through the wall slab and then exit subgrade into a catch basin for the mesquite bosk on the property. This diagram illustrates the 13-foot wall on the north, and then the neighbor's masonry wall on the south, which is 12'8", and then they have these 16-foot tall steel partitions to shield, I guess, looking over from their second floor balcony. For the U.S. Department of Interior, NPS, National Register of Historic Places, continuation sheet on the Barrio Historic District, this document outlines the Sonoran tradition. The original structure is transformed Sonoran, and we are looking to refer the modification to the original adobe that is getting structurally reinforced to be of the Sonoran traditional style, as well as the new CMU addition. The document states that dwellings were limited to a single story, but with high walls. Thus, a typical 15-foot wall will have a thickness of 18 inches or more, and the module was a rectangular room 12 to 15 feet wide. So I think what we're really asking here is a variance on the taller 14-foot addition. And then proposing the stucco on the reinforced parapet to match the house. And then the addition would be a heavier sanded stucco. This detail here illustrates our resolution, how to deal with the kitchen and deal with the windows. So we're not changing them on the exterior and modifying them only on the interior with the wood frame box to frame the view from the inside. And all of these are for reference only, and I can move through them if you'd like. They're just really a reference. The CMU masonry addition would adhere to the zero lot line setback currently set forth by the existing adobe structure, which is consistent within the development zone and both neighbors to the north and south. The new construction, the new CMU masonry addition will reflect the Sonoran architectural style in that it will have a parapet roof reflecting the high ceilings of the home. This is similar to other Sonoran style adobe structures in the development zone. The height, the new CMU bond beam and parapet wall will match the datum of the existing adobe structure, which stands at 12 feet. The top of the new addition square footage will stand at 14 feet to distinguish the old from the new. It is not taller than the tallest contributing property neighboring this project, which we estimate taller than 18 feet. The roof type, the parapet roof of the CMU addition, CMU masonry addition will be compatible with the transformed Sonoran architectural style of the existing adobe structure and will help define the difference between the new addition renovations and the existing home. We would like to propose that the surface texture and color remain the same as the existing house for structurally reinforced historic adobe addition, not in a duplication of a historic style, but leaning on the transformation of the pitched roof to a parapet as the defining and distinguishing character of the rehabilitation, merging with the historic adobe walls that are connected to the original adobe structure. There's a new structural CMU bond beam and parapet over the saved adobe walls, and the stucco of that portion should match the existing adobe structure for strength in surface and waterproofing, which is a smooth lime stucco. The new CMU addition will be taller and the surface texture will be a medium sand lime stucco finish. All of the details for the masonry addition are compatible with the Sonoran architectural style common in the development zone and follow the language of the existing adobe structure, such as the interior ceiling heights, and we would like to propose square window on the new addition and wood to differentiate from the historic adobe on the property. The rhythm proportion of the addition is compatible with those of the existing structure and those of contributors within the development zone. The openings have a similar rhythm and size ratio to the existing. The color of the existing stucco is a lime cement plaster with no paint, and using the natural tones of the lime. We proposed a new addition to use the same stucco and natural color from the mix, with the variation in texture from smooth to sandish for the new addition. On the utilities, we'll be replacing an outdated water heater in favor of an energy efficient tankless water heater, and all exterior and exposed utilities such as drain pipes from the kitchen sinks. We are proposing to the historic stick frame additions, the enclosed porches need to be reviewed for approval of demolition. It is our understanding that these porches were exterior and added on in 2 different phases and enclosed along the way, perhaps constructed along with the adobe walls to the south that we are proposing to keep. Structurally fortifying and modifying existing roof line. Structurally, they are not to current codes in terms of loads, structural members, energy efficiency, and ceiling height. Less than 7'6" in the lowest portions. The enclosing of these porches over time has led to a non-compliance of a bedroom having an egress, and the demolition of the enclosed spaces and porch reasserts the historic use for access to the exterior from the original main structure. Appraisals over the years have led to a diminishing value and the inability to accurately state a bedroom count based on the lack of egress. The demolition and new construction looks to remedy this and appropriately add value back into the appraisals in the home. There are future porches desired by the homeowner, but we're not considering these in this permit or scope of work. And then these are images of the project. Just as a reminder, 16-foot steel partitions with the masonry wall to the south. And some of the other shots of the property. The development zone that we're referring to in the document. I think that's it.
Okay. That completes your presentation then?
It does.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Yeah, so if we want to look, pull up the legal action report for the last one and just make sure we're comfortable with each of the comments? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Grace, did you want me to pull that up for you?
Oh, sure, yeah, I'm just having a little trouble finding it.
Can you guys stop sharing your screen? Oops, what address was this project? Oh, this was the month before, wasn't it?
492 South Convent.
Oh, here it is. Can you all see the screen?
Yes.
So this is for 492. A motion to continue is made by Shao with conditions that the plans are revised for the next meeting to include a distinction between the old and the new on the west facade, and review of the window proportions is complete to get as close as possible the original sizes on the north facade of the proposed kitchen. Hewitt seconded the motion. The motion passed with a vote of 5-0. For the record, in between these meetings, I spoke with the architect and recommended that he not mess around with the window proportion sizes on the north side of the historic portion, because it was going to be problematic, definitely with PRS, and really they're the original window openings and they should be not jacked around with, which is why he's maintaining those and then doing something on the interior.
Thank you for that clarification.
So that's that second one. So are we comfortable that they met that second part of the motion then? Just check that off and talk about the first one instead.
Sure. Paul, how about you?
I think the treatment of the window is acceptable in my opinion.
Okay, so then the first item of the motion, to make a distinction between old and new. So it seems like that south block, that's CMU, they made a distinction both in texture and in height from the existing, but not between the existing adobe and that bond beam, which is, I think, one of the things Philip was pointing out in the last meeting. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, in my opinion, I don't think there's really a necessity to differentiate between the new and the old part of that wall that's being added onto. I think that would look kind of odd if there was something done. Yeah, I think that that the proposal as it is now is acceptable in my opinion.
Yes, I think Paul's point is well taken. I think it's acceptable.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well.
Okay, should we move on? Is there anything else that?
I didn't have anything else. Yeah, if it's time to make a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve the plans.
I'll second that.
It's so just for discussion, and sorry, you kind of got on the motion really quick, Paul. Because they are proposing a reduced setback, even though there's an existing reduced setback on the north side, just to be safe, you should probably recommend a waiver of the setbacks to have the reduced setback, just so it's clear. Does that make sense?
Sure, I could withdraw that motion and make a motion to approve the plans, including the changes in the setback.
I
Is
will
there-
second that.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor, Paul,
Aye.
Mary
Aye.
Lou, aye. Grace,
Grace, I as well, sorry.
So it passes 3-0. Cool.
I guess I only have one question, which is for Jody, really is, can we get on the next HPZ?
I will work on getting you docketed on the next available one. It may not be, it depends on what's on the schedule. There's all of the advisory boards get funneled to PRS, and there's one PRS. So I'll let you know when I can get you scheduled on that.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'll stop sharing so you can move on to the next item.
okay, the next item is 4B, 400 West Simpson Street. It's a courtesy review.
Everyone. I am Martina with Dust Architects. We had a first courtesy review on February the 7th.
Artina, can you speak? You're really not.
I can't hear anything.
Can you hear
Just-
me better
Not much better.
now? How about now? I'll try to yell.
That I think will work.
Okay, sounds good. So we had the first courtesy review on February the 7th. We are working on the Elysian, the old Elysian Grove Market. We are representing the two clients, Cara and Peter Furman. They're interested in adding a new ADU in the backyard. And these are the two files that we shared last time, just so everyone is up to date. We shared a very simple volumetric study of where we would like to place the ADU and the new pool in the backyard. The intervention will be one, so the clients would like to intervene on the Elysian Grove Market, but also do the new construction. But for the moment, today, I will present only the ADU because the clients are moving forward with the interior renovation and another permit. So we divided the study in a couple of chapters to tackle different issues that we ran into last time. And hopefully it will be more clear and you will get to see more details. I will not spend too much time explaining the Elysian Grove Market because I believe all of you are more or less familiar with the site. It was important for us to understand where it began and the origins of the Elysian Grove Market and what it became today and the reasons for that. So you can see that in the 60s was the last date that the Elysian Grove Market stopped functioning as a local grocery store, and it was divided into 3 units, and it remained residential ever since. So these are the 2 most difficult chapters. So if I can get you to make maybe more compelling arguments to understand these 2 chapters, I think the rest will be very easy. We wanted to study the neighborhood itself because studying the guidelines and interpreting them, we found ourselves in a more unique situation in terms that we are in the El Hoyo neighborhood, but our building, the Elysian Grove Market, is one of the few traditional Sonoran buildings, while the rest over time has had different layers applied to them, so they have changed shape and so on, but ours still remains as a traditional Sonoran. So that was important for us to understand, but also understand what is happening in the context. So we studied the development zone. It was important for us to understand which other Sonoran buildings we have in the immediate context. And we can see that we have just one that has had some modifications, but it's still a true Sonoran building, which is the house right in front of the Elysian Grove Market. We can see from the plan that we have a market that stretches on both sides. So we have the zero lot line, a very minimum offset from the front street from West Simpson. And we can see the same theme over the other houses that follow on the street. And this was very typical of the row houses at the moment. So this was very important for us to understand in order to define which is the best way to approach adding a new building in this context, as well as conserve the existing EGM structure. We understand the need to blend in the context and that everything should be harmonious. But at the same time, we feel like the buildings are in our immediate context define a layering of styles and periods, and certain design moves that we wanted to make feel like they could create more confusion in terms of the periods and styles rather than complement the building. So if we zoom a little bit more into the context, we're still in the El Pollo neighborhood. We can see the fences, which was one of the topics that we discussed last time. We wanted to propose masonry all around the Elysian Grove Market. And we had a couple of discussions of whether that would be appropriate for the context or not. If we look right in front of the building, we have the house that already has an adobe wall that wraps around the house, but also continues to the other one in the back, which is non-contributing. And then we have a couple more in the context. But in this neighborhood, as I said before, there's only a handful of real Sonoran buildings. So if necessary, we would like to request to take a look at a larger scale of the Barrio Historico and analyze the Sonoran row houses, as we feel that that would be a better way to honor and keep that in mind when we want to intervene and make new additions to the EGM site. These are some of the pictures of the context. So this is the house right in front of EGM. This is a long street, the El Paso Avenue. And we see that the houses are connected with the masonry wall. The same thing happens, this is right in front of the EGM. So we have a tall wall and the same at the end of the street. These are some other examples that are a little bit further from our site. This is the one immediately where the school is. There's a little portion of a tall masonry wall. There's some other ones that have taller adobe walls. This one is a low one. There's another one that is taller in the back that is hidden by the trees. And the same right down Simpson Street. And there's many more references, but we focus on the ones that were closer. So if it's necessary, we would like to do a larger scale study to analyze the Sonoran buildings in the whole Barrio Historico. This is another one which for us was very interesting. It's very close to the site. And it's another example of having the houses being connected with tall walls that define inner courtyards in their own terms. Another, I would like to mention, since I'm here, another interesting fact is how well the builders and the time that they were building the traditional Sonoran buildings, they were adapting themselves to the difficult topography and they had to find ways to deal with the difficult flooding seasons. And at this time, the most convenient and the one that resulted to be the most durable was the adobe wall. They usually had even a concrete base, and that surprisingly continued lasting up to today. And from our point of view, from let's say sustainability point of view of not having to replace this wall every couple of years, which is what we believe happened in the past, we would like to propose a structure like this. So we wanted to document the existing site. So we focused more on the existing fence, which is a corrugated metal fence that runs all throughout the Elysian Grove Market backyard, and it's tall 6 feet. You can see some details in these pictures, also the ones following, that it's not in great condition, and in fact it has been replaced in the past couple of years. You can see the detail where it touches the original market. We were studying as many pictures and as many records as we could find before tackling the conservation of this building, because we wanted to document as accurately as possible what was done and when. And already in recent pictures that we found from 2006 to 2015, we can already see a lot of changes that were never permitted. We believe, at least if you know of a document that explains what was changed throughout the years, we would be very happy to have it. One of the things that we can see that changed that is very important is the fence that used to be in 2006, the wooden fence. Another important detail is the frame of the window, which was wooden before, and now it has been concealed. Another is the landing pod in front of the house. It now has another shape that resembles the stairs that were in the front yard, in the backyard. We see some of the signs that have been repainting that are more minor changes. So we know that between 2006 and 2015, these changes took place, but we don't have much record of what happened before that. As we know, this neighborhood was historically ignored from the city, so even it was not included in the sunburn insurance maps. So usually it stops right before the neighborhood begins. In the 30s, they started to document the Carrillo Elementary School, which was an important building, but it never reached the Elysian Grove Market. So unfortunately, we can't really tell the state of the building in the early ages. The oldest picture, the first picture that we have that we believe is the oldest is from 78. And at that point, the building was already functioning as a residential and not anymore as a market. In red is everything that we would like to demolish on the site plan. So the fence, the corrugated fence would be demolished, and all of the little stepping stones and the platforms and stairs that we can see that lead to different parts of the house. Because of the difficult topography, there was this intervention, but we're not sure in which period of time. We followed the same logic for the elevations, just for the record. So for the moment, we're dealing only with the backyard, which is where you will see the highlighted red areas. For our proposal, you saw before the volumetric design. A couple of things we would like to know that this whole site will be divided and used by 3 families, 3 units. So we have the west wing of the old building, the east wing, and then we have the ADU, which is where the mom of one of the owners will be living. So they all have very different privacy issues that we didn't used to have in the market when it was functioning as a market. So for us, that is a challenge of the moment of trying to incorporate these needs of having a residential project, but at the same time honoring the existing building. There's also some practical issues in the sense that in the front where there's the elementary school, that's exactly where the service side is. So in the mornings you have the very loud trash collecting trucks. And it's very unpleasant for the people that are living there now. Very quickly, I will explain our design decisions, and then if you have any questions, we would be happy to look into those into more detail, so I don't take too much time. The ADU will be placed in the back of the yard, the backyard. It will have a garage, but it will be open, so you will see a very light structure. It's not an enclosed volume. There's the addition of the pool on the west side of the lot. And then there's a new landscape project that would lead the inhabitants from one level to the other, replacing the existing platforms. This will be clearer if you see in plan. So the mom would need to have access to the back side, but also communicate with the owners that will be living in the east wing. We would also like to add some shade, but we will do that in the lightest way as possible, because we believe it would be a good approach to add structures like this and to make them as flexible as possible, so that in the future, if they need to be removed, it will not be a big intervention. It will not compromise the site itself. So there will be just the very thin rods, and we'll have the tensile, the textile shades that are retractable. We wanted to get your opinion first on what are your first impressions of this volume. So we tried to keep the height lower than the original EGM. The building will be 12 feet tall. And just some technical sections of understanding how one moves in this space. The windows that we would like to add will be recessed, so they will not be flush. You can see a little very schematic detail. As for the west elevation, we would like to propose taking the exact dimensions of the existing window in the Elysian Grove Market, which is also on the east facade, and have that for the ADU. We are aware that usually the horizontal dimensions are not seen as appropriate in this context. So for that reason, we have two options. The option A, which is a simple square window, and the option B, which takes the dimensions of what is already existing on site. And these are just some references for that we used for doing this study. Going back to the plan and looking at the wall that we proposed, we would need that wall only. We would like to have that wall only on the east side of the lot, as to provide for that privacy from the noise that comes from the elementary school. We're aware that houses of this period had typically walls that were up to 15 feet tall. For us, that's too much. We don't want to overcome the height of the existing Elysian Grove Market. Ideally, we would like to have a wall that reaches up to 10 to 8 feet. And we would like to have to do that only for this side. The west wall can remain the 6, the typical that is allowable for this area, that is the 6 feet tall CMU. These claims of requesting a wall like this, we tried to study also the code, and we found some hints that in these cases where we have a Sonoran row house, and we fulfilled those requirements of having a 0 lot line and almost 0 lot line in the north side of the property, then we could request a variance on those walls and have a higher wall than what is typically allowable. So this is a very brief explanation of our intentions with the site. Nothing is defined, absolutely. So we are more than willing to restudy the facade and to get your initial feedback.
Does that complete your presentation?
Yes.
I have to say, I really couldn't understand a lot of what was being said in the presentation. I'd like to raise the question of the masonry wall, and I'd like to point out that a lot of the walls that were being shown in the presentation are one outside of the development zone for this particular property. And also a number of these are more modern walls that weren't really created in the historic period. For example, on your photograph number 5 that was being shown, that was a building that was built in the early 1980s. So that is not a relevant feature for the to use as a precedent for having a masonry wall here.
Picture number 1, for example, is the lot right across the R lot, which is part of the, which is here.
I'll go back to the 5. Those buildings in that photograph are all modern buildings.
Yes, I understand that, but they also, we were looking at the typology of the buildings that stretch, and
I can't understand what you're saying. Do you have a better microphone that you could use?
can you hear better now?
Yes.
Okay, I think maybe my voice was being blocked by the laptop. We understand that. That's why we were saying that in our context in the neighborhood, we don't have a lot of examples that would reflect our condition, which is unique in this case. We have a building which is still traditional Sonoran, and in our development zone, we have just one, but it also has had some changes during the years, but it still remains, let's say, traditional Sonoran, which is the building that you see in front. That's why for us,
Yeah, well,
yes.
Your development zone for this corner property would represent Simpson Street on the same side and across the street, and Samaniego Avenue. And in those areas, there's nothing corresponding to the wall that you're interested in building there.
Which it would, it says that it takes the diagonal from your lot. So it would typically take, is this map that we drew correct? This outline of the development zone?
Okay.
No, it's not correct.
Okay, which buildings would be excluded from this?
No, it should be expanded.
Expanded, yeah.
And okay, but even if it's that zone, we still have the building in front, which is in front of the street, and that has a masonry wall, which is picture number 2 and 1. Picture number 1 and picture number 2.
Yeah, the number 1 wall there if I'm not mistaken, is a more modern wall.
On the second, there's a more modern wall.
And on the second one, where is that photograph from? Where is that building?
This is right in front. Let me see. So this is the.
So what?
It's right in front of the. It's right in front of the building, right across the street.
No, I believe that's outside of the development zone. That's not on Simpson Street. It's not on San Diego Avenue.
It is on Simpson Street, yes.
It's 350 West Simpson,
350 West Simpson Street.
directly north of Legion Grove.
It's within the, Paul, it's within their development zone.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. But still, it looks like that wall is along the alley. It's not along it's not along the street as.
Because the lot that they have is smaller on West Simpson. It does continue in the El Paso Avenue as well. So that's where the building ends, and then the wall continues. But the lot is considerably smaller than the one that the Elysian Grove Market has.
But I think that in photo one, that wall along the front of the building is a more modern wall than.
Maybe it will be helpful to quote one of the codes, 983.3, where they talk about the setbacks on our case, which is the Sonoran row house typology. And it says in specific cases where there's no front building setback, in our case, there's a minimal front and no side setback on Samaniego, a high wall or fence or a dense hedge may be located on the property line to allow the building itself to be set further back. The design.
I'm sorry, I can't understand what you're saying.
I'm reading one of the.
Is anyone else? Hold on, is anyone else having problems understanding that?
Okay. Yes.
Per the City of Tucson Development Standards 908.3.3 setbacks, Sonoran Row House states, in specific cases where there is no front building setback, in our case, a minimal front and no side setback on Samaniego, a high wall, a fence, or a dense hedge may be located on the property line to allow the building itself to be set further back. The design solution would reinforce the continuous and cohesive sense of enclosure along the street while providing the unique needs of the property owner. The need for an enclosed outdoor space for children's play, an interior courtyard as an entry or a seating area.
Okay, but in the case of the wall along Samaniego Avenue, if that were connecting to a Sonoran row house, I could see where that would be justifiable. But basically, it doesn't conform to the streetscape on Samaniego Avenue.
Correct, but wouldn't it be more appropriate to work with a building typology that we have instead of blending in with the context and adding a fence that is not honoring the tradition in which the period in which the building was constructed?
Well, I think you have to look at what the predominant fencing is in the neighborhood, and it's not walled properties, you know.
So also there's a couple of examples on Simpson Street. There's the one in 438 that also has a high wall. But the biggest concentration of row houses of Sonora, like the EGM, is not in the Barrio Historico, we think. So that's why we would like to study this typology in the Barrio Historico in general and understand how these buildings are treated for the time that they were built in, instead of applying another fence that we find in the immediate context that belongs to a building that has had a lot of layers added to it over the years. And I believe that creates more confusion to the history of the building itself, rather than add more value to it.
Well, this property for many years had just had a wooden fence around it. It was only within relatively recent times that the wood was deteriorating and was replaced with metal. So I do believe that to have a masonry wall surrounding this property is going against the continuity of the neighborhood and what has been there before.
Reese, do you have any comments?
Regarding the wall, not particularly. What about you, Mary Lou?
Considering what's in the neighborhood, I think it's sort of like out of context for me.
Yeah, well, this is the third time that a wall has been proposed around this property to the advisory board, and in the previous cases, it was decided that the wall was out of character, and I still believe that having a wall around this property is out of character.
So Jody, I think part of the presentation was suggesting an expansion to the development zone. Is that something that you would determine? Is that something the board would approve? How does that work?
So it sounded like they were actually just talking about looking at similar homes within the district. However, to get a feel for the style. But if they're wanting to expand their development zone to actually use those as style references for basing their approval on for what they're going to do to this property, it is a formal process. They would have to submit a request to the zoning administrator. There's a fee associated with it, and the zoning administrator would have to approve that request. They would look at why you're expanding it, what's the precedent. They would look at the number of contributing properties, which you have a fair number of within your existing development zone, just to understand if expansion of the development zone is warranted. Probably your most recent expansion that was approved was one for a non-contributing resource where it was built with a flat roof. I think you guys saw it maybe earlier this year or late last year, but it was built with a flat roof that had done a fair amount of damage to the property, and they were proposing to pitch the roof. But in pitching the roof, it would extend their height of what was existing in the development zone. So they were trying to capture additional height. And they basically made the case for why they needed to expand it and why they were increasing their roof height, et cetera. And ultimately that was approved, but it is something that would have to go through the zoning administrator for approval.
Got it.
And you said our actual outline of our understanding of the development zone still needs to be expanded on our diagram here.
Yeah, so I mean, I would have to, right off the bat, no, you don't go down there. But you would go probably further along on Simpson. And you would actually capture the Carrillo School in there. Because that would fall within your development zone.
Even if
But-
it's on another neighborhood,
I'm sorry?
even if it belongs to another district?
It's also a commercial building. So it's like doing apples and oranges. So yes, it would be in your development zone, but you can't compare it because it is a commercial building.
So it is within a different National Register district, but it is within the same HPZ. So this is one HPZ, Historic Preservation Zone, which is why you would capture it. So normally if your HPZ ended at Samaniego and the right side was outside of the district and the left side was inside the district, then you wouldn't be able to include it. But in this instance, you can. I'll sit down and look at a map a little bit better, not in this meeting where I have other questions, but and get back to you on your development zone.
Jody, you had other questions?
I meant as I'm sitting here trying to take notes too. So,
Sorry.
but no, I mean, this is just a courtesy review. I think they're getting the gist of it with the fence that you have an issue and concern about. Was there other comments on?
The last time this project came before us, we approved a lot of things for the main house. And we sort of left the back part alone because that was not the focus. I'm not sure, because it's been a while. I'm not sure what we initially approved for the backyard. And that whole pool thing, we sort of left that up in the air because at that point it was not something that they were moving forward with because they were working on the main house. Correct me if I'm wrong.
They had, so as I recall, the last time it came through, there was a wall on Samaniego. There was a rear porch cover that they were proposing to do that was
Mhm.
actually going to intersect with the wall. So the wall would be covering a portion of it would like a step down wall, but the porch roof would intersect with the wall. The end of the porch roof would intersect with the wall. So it would essentially be covering up a portion of that wall. They had work to the window wells that they were doing. They were doing some AC work on the roof, and which was approved because he made the case that it wasn't going to have any visibility from the public right away. And they really weren't, I think they were doing a pool in the backyard, which is not something that you guys review anyways. And they didn't have any other built structures that I recall off the top of my head for the rear yard.
I just have another question. On the drawing that was submitted, there's a note that there are columns for the shade system. And there's no illustrations of what that would involve.
See in plan.
Shade. The shade is the idea is that it's a suspended cable like at the back of Maynard's restaurant. So there wouldn't be any columns, right?
There would be some kind of a support, but if we use the wall that we propose, it would be hidden inside, and we wouldn't be touching the building itself. And where we have the same situation that is getting closer to the, let's see. In this case, the support.
You know, there's a notation that says columns to support, I printed this out, and the on a standard letter size thing, the print is extremely small.
The cable system.
Yeah, it says columns to support cables for the tensile shade system.
Yeah, so those would be the ones that we saw in, let's see, here.
I mean, shouldn't we have some kind of a drawing to show what?
We can do that for the next step. It will be a simple a steel very as thin as it can be column that that is supported by the wall.
Looking at this illustration, it looks like the shade system is considerably higher than the top of the wall. Again, it says columns to support the cables, but you know, we don't have any idea what those columns are.
Steel posts.
It's probably the item 3x3.
Yeah, we'll have to get with an engineer to figure out what that would be. Yeah. That's the alley side, right?
It's a simple.
Okay, on this drawing, on the display here, I'm just seeing some very faint lines going up. On the drawings that we had access to before this meeting, there was just nothing showing. So
Oh, I think they were very light and couldn't
there's
be.
nothing showing.
Yes, it's the most light system that we could think of, so that it's the least intrusive in a sense. So these will be very thin cables that will reach the ADU wall, and they will be supported by very simple steel columns, probably 3x3 maybe, as thin as we can get them, so that they're the least intrusive. Yes.
Martina, if you have photos of a similar system, I would recommend at the next meeting that you include those in the file.
Yeah, now one thing, in the most recent drawings that we had available to us, there were no dimensions for the structure that was being built in the back. I assume everything is the same as in the first set of drawings?
Yes. Can share. So the system would be this. We have very thin, this. So very thin rods, cables that reach the ADU structure, and then a very light tensile. This can be the other side where you can see the columns. But
Well, I think that we should have access to this information before the meeting where we're going to be expressing our opinions.
Okay, we can do that for the next time. We were focused more on the things we found more problematic based on our last discussion. So the size and positioning of the ADU and the wall proposal. But we can definitely add more details for the.
And I'd like to suggest when you come back here that you consider doing something like getting a headset with a proper microphone, so that we might be able to understand what you're saying better.
Okay.
Yeah, but the microphones in some of these computers are really can really be pretty poor quality, and that's why I use a headset when I'm attending meetings like this, because I can hear better and people can understand me better when I'm talking.
You had mentioned the size and the location of the ADU. Can you speak a little bit to how that has changed from the previous presentation?
It hasn't changed. But you can see to more detail why is it located, because last time we presented the volumetric study, there were a lot of questions of why it was placed there and its size and its relationship to the rest of the EGM. So in the new drawings, you can see the reason why it is set back from the south property line, where we are quote unquote hiding the garage, and how the ADU is connected to the rest of the site. But the location has remained unchanged.
Got it. Thank you. Jody, do you by chance have the meeting minutes available from the previous review, courtesy review?
Let me see. When did they go? What was that? Sorry.
February 7.
Oh, February 7th. February. No.
14th, maybe.
Oh, there you are. Which means you're. Oh, that's kind of weird. Whoa, what happened? 17th. Oh, what happened to that? Sorry. Did I not post that? Sorry, now I have to look someplace else because I can't find them online.
I have the two. You're looking for the meeting.
Oh, can you guys stop sharing for a minute? There we go. So you should be on here. So this is the beginning. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
So here were basically these were the comments and discussion.
I can answer the second question that we didn't address yet. Paul had wanted to know why the lot that was presented on the plan appeared to be bigger than what is presented on the city's maps. We know that in that neighborhood, there were a lot of agreements that were made without actually having a surveyor that would verify all of the dimensions. So it's very common that people kind of overstepped on their boundary lines. And we already know that the EGM is larger than the lot. We have done the survey. We're currently waiting for the drawings. So we should be able to know something in the next weeks. We will have the official dimension of the lot and the points of the existing building.
Do you have a figure ground diagram to speak to that development zone massing versus accessory dwelling unit?
Should I share the screen?
Oh, sorry.
So in the maps that we presented, we kept what is official for the moment on from the assessor's records maps. So we have 80 feet on the south property line. But from what we measured roughly on site, that is larger. And also you can see already by this drawing, so the property line is this. And the existing buildings goes a little bit outside what is declared as a property line.
I noticed in your latest drawing that the 80 feet is marked from the inside of the wall at one corner to the outside of the wall at the other corner. And if that were the case, one of the walls would be on the outside of the property line.
Yeah, I have just the printed version of the map, but we can verify and confirm this once we get the drawings back.
We have a survey in the works. We're just waiting on them to get the official survey back to us.
Yeah, I know I've seen the surveyors going around the neighborhood trying to find reference points for their survey.
Great, Grace, did you ask for a figured ground where in reference to the existing house and the ADU in the neighborhood? Is that what you were looking to see?
Yeah, I think that was the discussion last time, was just understanding sort of the site utilization in comparison to the development zone. Are we now exceeding that, or is it pretty in line with what everybody else has footprint wise?
Not in the specification.
Okay. We don't have one prepared, so we'll put that together. We can look at the figure ground. The site, is there any site?
Okay, does anybody else have any questions or comments, or have we?
Well, I might just comment that there are two storage structures, one for the pool and one attached to the ADU, and they're not displayed on any of the elevations that we were given.
They are displayed on the elevations on a schematic scale, but we can have details for the next meeting.
I mean, we were not provided with any elevations that were showing them. So I'm just saying that it's helpful if we can get as much information as possible before the meeting that we can review to better prepare us to evaluate the plans.
Paul, are you talking about the shade structures?
No, no, there's one, there's a pool, equipment storage, and then there's another storage structure on the east end of the DU.
Okay. Thank you.
Maybe I didn't understand, but these are the drawings that we shared last week.
Nice.
These are the ones that we shared last week. The first, let's see.
Okay, the drawing that we're seeing now, that's the only drawing that was made available when we got the notice of the meeting. We didn't get any of the other.
The elevations were included.
They were included.
Yeah.
We sent the plan and then the elevations. And you can see the shade structure here.
Yeah, well, the materials that were provided in Jody's notice of the meeting only had 3 pages of drawings. There was no additional materials that was.
But it's a courtesy review, so you're not taking any action. Courtesy reviews aren't required to have the amount of paperwork that go for a formal review. And what they provided a site plan and they provided elevations for the courtesy review.
Right. And the elevations did not include the accessory structures.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. Yeah, so this is the equipment storage, which is noted in plan as well. And the shading system and the pool. And the ADU, which is the building information.
Yeah, now there's the storage structure that's on the east end of the ADU.
Yes.
And then there's the pool storage structure that's attached to the wall on the south end of the property.
Yes, so that structure, the one of the pool equipment, will be realized now. So you can see that on the elevation, while the storage is still to be defined with our clients. So it's on plan for the moment, but it's not part of our design scope now.
I would recommend that you call out the materials of your pool equipment storage area, what you're gonna shield that with, if it's gonna be metal or masonry or whatever you're proposing. Same goes with the storage that's at the end of the ADU.
So both of them have, the pool equipment is a wood frame metal clad that's open to sky, as you can read in the description. And the other one will most likely be the same, the structure storage. But we still haven't defined that. If it's important for the review, we can do that for the next meeting as well.
For the formal review, you're gonna wanna have that cleared out, shown on the elevations, et cetera. And note what kind of, if it's just a corrugated metal, one, you have a corrugated roof, but the sidewalls, it's like metal clad, what kind of metal clad, that stuff. But thank you for pointing out the additional materials there.
Okay, any further comments or questions?
I would just like to understand a little better what would be the best approach in our case that we have such a different building from the rest of the context. I understand the need to have the building match and blend with what is existing and keeping all of our design decisions appropriate, let's say. But in our case, that we have a very specific type of building that is not present in our historic neighborhood, what would be a good approach to honor that kind of tradition instead of taking what is in the context, in the immediate context, which would be a wooden or a metal fence? I think this would help us understand better and be more, have more intentions when we are designing and have that process clear in our minds.
I would say to summarize, I'll take a shot at it since you guys are kind of all silent about this. I would say to summarize their concerns, yes, you are a different type of building in that you were originally a grocery store kind of thing, store where it's all residential, but you're still part of the neighborhood. You're still within the district, you're still within that development zone. So you still need to conform to the other types of materials and fences. That's something you strongly need to think of. Bear in mind that Barrio Historico is advisory. They're going to make a recommendation. And then you'll go to the plans review subcommittee and they will also make a recommendation, and both of those recommendations go to the director for a decision letter. But it behooves you to have positive recommendations from both. And PRS will look to the recommendation that was made by Barrio to help kind of form their recommendation. So even though you are historically a different type of building, you still are within that development zone, and that's going to dictate your materials and your designs. It seems, basically listening to everybody, that your ADU really isn't the big concern. It's the fence and potentially the support structures for your shade structure. Those are probably what you're going to want to focus on. I mean, focus on all of it, but pay more attention to those two items for sure. Did I misspeak?
No, you summarized it well.
Yeah, well, I think I might mention that, in your presentation justifying the masonry wall, you were basically picking out some exceptional details in the neighborhood in order to justify something surrounding the property.
If we find, for example, if we make a study of all the neighborhood, the El Hoyo neighborhood, and we try to find the Sonoran examples that have the masonry or adobe walls, would that be something that would be helpful for you to consider the wall? Or you would still consider the fences that we have close by to be the...
Well, if you look at the development zone, the examples of walls that you have are not prevalent in the area. They're just some exceptional details that aren't consistent with.
You're muted.
Paul, you muted yourself after. I don't know if you had stuff that you were still saying and then you kind of muted yourself.
Oh, okay. Okay, I don't know at what point in time I muted myself there.
That there's only a few exceptional examples and it's not really prevalent in the neighborhood to have the adobe or masonry walls.
If you look at the streetscapes in that neighborhood on Simpson and on Samaniego Avenue, there are no examples of masonry walls.
And what about in front of our lot?
Another thing is that some of the walls, like the property on Lewis Street that you were using as an example, were more modern buildings. You might check and see, when the properties were constructed that have those walls.
So I would add, you're welcome to look at the district wide to find similarities with Sonoran properties, but ultimately, when Barrio Historico makes a recommendation, it'll be based on your development zone.
Okay, so
And
your, sorry, you can.
Sorry, go ahead.
So if we find that the building on the 350 West Simpson Street was constructed, let's say in the 40s or 50s, so within the time frame of what we consider historic contributing in the neighborhood, would that be a good argument to ask for a masonry wall?
Yeah, so if it's a contributing building, it's within your development zone and they had a masonry wall, then that helps you make your case. If it's a contributing building, but it's outside of your development zone, that doesn't help make your case. I would say you want to look at when that masonry wall was constructed too. I mean, if it was something that was done without a permit and it was probably done 2 years ago, that's probably not going to work in your favor.
If you look at this drawing here, there are examples of walls, but they are just isolated examples. That if you look at the neighborhood as a whole, the walls there, might represent 5% of the frontage of the properties, or maybe less than that.
But also because there are about 5% Sonoran buildings in the neighborhood. The rest have been formed. Is that a correct way to look at it?
I think that you guys are coming at it from two different directions. You're looking at the architectural style and they're looking at what was historically appropriate for that development zone.
Yeah, and that's why I brought up what the options are for expanding your development zone. I don't know, Jody, how difficult that process is, but if you were to say get a zoning examiner approval to say our development zone includes these other Sonoran type houses, and here's why we're doing that, I think that would be, from this review standpoint, a compelling argument.
It's something to look into. Artina, if you want to email me, I can get you the zoning examiner's contact information. So you can start on that process if that's the direction that you want to go.
There is no the last question. If there is no documentation when certain masonry or adobe wall was constructed, would you consider that to be automatically historic or not?
I would say we would probably have to address that when we got to that point.
Yeah, I'm asking only because I was thinking the same when researching the neighborhood, that we were convinced that the corrugated metal fence was historic, let's say, or at least has been there for a long time, only to find out that it was added something like 10 or 15 years ago. So I think that's an important information to have when deciding how we want to approach this, and just trying to understand how it works and to be.
Okay, I can say this much. In In 1974, when Tom and Rama Wiper purchased the Elysian Grove Market and renovated it to make it into 3 apartments, they put up a wooden fence around the property. And that wooden fence had remained for quite a few years. And it was maybe 10 years ago that the wooden fence was deteriorating and was removed and replaced with the galvanized metal. So, I don't know what was there before 1974. I could talk to Andy Trujillo, who was a young boy when the market was. He's part of the family that owned the market. I could ask him what was surrounding the building. I would assume that there would have just been a simple fence at that time.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
Maybe just touching on the proportions of the opening of the ADU. Do you have any comments on, let's see, on the rhythm of the facade? Do you think that it works well with the existing Elysian Grove Market?
Well, I think that you would want to have the doors and windows of the ADU relate to the other buildings in the neighborhood. That I think the square windows are out of place in that, and I think that the large doors and windows on the sides are not consistent with what you would find in buildings in the development zone.
And would the opening on the west elevation be approved if it's horizontal, matching exactly the same dimension as the one we find in the EGM? Even if it's
I'm sorry, I'm still having trouble understanding you.
even if we don't find the horizontal openings in the context, but we have one in the existing building, is that a good argument to propose that for the ADU, like the one you see here, the option B?
Well, I think you have to consider that the market building was a commercial building, and I think that the ADU should conform to the to the style of the residential buildings that are within the development zone.
I have no more questions. That was the last one.
Okay. Okay, if there aren't any more questions or comments, then you have feedback from the board.
I'm sorry if there's just the 3 of us here, that I think it might have been helpful if the other members of the board had been available.
We can develop this and get back with another courtesy review.
Okay. Okay, if that's it, we're finished with the courtesy review then, and get back to us. And Jody, you're going to talk to them about the zoning examiner option.
Yeah, just send me an email to remind me. Sorry, Artina, I forget a lot of stuff. I think it's age related. Anyways, shoot me an email and I will get you the zoning examiner information. Hey, Mary Lou,
Okay.
to go back to the agenda, because you skipped it,
Yeah.
just so I can check all my boxes when I'm like doing the minutes. There was no public comments under number 3, call to the audience.
Okay. I forgot about that myself.
Sorry.
It's all right. All right, so shall we, someone move to close this meeting?
So
There's no other-
just for the record, there's number 5, which is design guidelines, and number 6, which is the staff updates.
Oh, we have a meeting on what, the 27th for design review?
We do. We do have a meeting for that on the 27th.
Okay,
It's a Monday, and I'll be sending out the agenda. I think I already sent out the appointment for it, so you guys should have it on
Yes.
your calendar.
Jody, before we adjourn, did you have any additional information or thoughts about that? We got an email regarding conflict of interest.
Oh, that's a good question. It had come up because there's a rather large project that is being proposed in Armory Park. It's still in the courtesy review stages. It's 375 South Stone, so it'll be new construction on 375 South Stone, which is a kind of vacant lot now. And there's a garage that's going to stay, but then it also, next door to the east is Brady Court, which is a bungalow court. And then to the east of that is Curacao, which was part of a city RFP because the city owns it and the county has an easement on it. And then just east of that is the All Saints project, which is a old school. There's a parking lot and there's some buildings that to the south of that they wanted to rehab and include a potential parking garage and a bunch of other elements. And so there's some people that live, Arizona Avenue is a named alley for all intents and purposes. It's a street that is behind all of that. And they have some property owners who own property on Arizona Avenue. So they're not going to get any financial benefit from the project, but their property values have the potential to be impacted because they're going to have, like a 3-story building or balconies or whatever, looking down into their backyards. And so there were questions back and forth about conflict of interest and when to recuse. And that email was what was kind of detailing my correspondence with the city attorney that I had sent out to them regarding recusals. And I thought it might be helpful for all of the advisory boards to have that information. Essentially, the way that it's worded, it says something along the lines of recuse if you're in close proximity. It's not defined close proximity, like, 50 feet, 100 feet or whatever. But if you're, it could generally be assumed if you're a next door neighbor, like your house backs up to it or is right next door to it, and somehow you are maybe not receiving financial gain from it, but could be impacted by what they're proposing to do, then you might want to consider recusing. Recusing means that you are totally out of the meeting. You don't vote on it. You don't listen to it. On the virtual calls, you'll like literally drop off and then you get texted or called when the meeting comes back and you can rejoin the meeting after that item. So you wouldn't have any kind of comments at all. But that's generally conflict of interest. It is something that you want to, it's not me to police it. It's for you to decide whether or not you have a conflict of interest, understanding those are the guidelines that are put forth. Keep in mind that should there be something that comes up, and you guys know this well, it could come back on you if you don't recuse, and then that item is null and void. And you're liable for it because somebody's like super PO'd that you didn't recuse and you voted that negatively or however, and that impacted the overall approval of their project.
Jody, sorry for interrupting. Is it okay if we leave?
Oh yeah. You guys don't listen to this conversation. This is boring for you.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks. Bye.
Uh,
So does that answer your question, Grace, or did you want more information?
No, I think that answers my question.
yeah, that's helpful too, Jody.
It is, I mean, it's been a very back and forth conversation with Armory Park for sure on conflict of interest and when to recuse. And it's a touchy subject. And I know people want to be involved, especially when it's, your neighbor. And that was what happened in Armory Park too, where there's some people who are like, oh, I should be in this because I, want to, even though I have a property in close proximity, I want to participate. Ultimately, what'll happen though, is while you may not be able to participate in Barrio Historico dealings, you could in PRS. So you could provide comments in PRS, you could like show up and speak to your concerns about the project in PRS, because you're not on PRS. You're only on Barrio. That's where you have the conflict, not on PRS. And then if it got appealed, you could speak to that because it's in mayor and council and you're not on mayor and council. Even though you would be, if it got appealed, Barrio would have to vote on whether or not to appeal, and you would also have to recuse from that because there was an impact. But if it did ultimately get appealed, then it went to mayor and council and you could speak to that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you just want to make sure that you're always speaking as a member of the public if you do have a perceived conflict of interest, and err on the side of staying out of it.
Yes, exactly.
Got
So, and keep it in mind, is how close is it to my property? Do I need to pull out of this? And what's going on with it? That's really what you just need to be mindful of. I would recommend that you read the conflict of interest document that's got a link in there. They have a bunch of different scenarios and everything like that. I'm always mindful of conflict of interest. I don't take gifts from anybody. Those basketball tickets or the money, I steer clear of that. Believe it or not, I've had people who tried to pay me money for stuff, and I'm like, seriously, I can get fired for that. So yeah, I'm always mindful of it. Any other questions about it? I'm glad you brought it up and asked. And you guys read it. That makes me feel better.
We did read it.
On staff updates, I just want to let you know that there is a meeting on the 16th. It's a stakeholder meeting. It is about the separation of the commission, and we'll be going over potential recommendations, and then there'll be like a work session that'll go to the historic commission, and I will let everybody know when that gets scheduled, because that's an open meeting and you're welcome to come to that and voice your concerns. I don't know if Philippe has been updating you. He's been regularly attending the meetings. I don't know if he's like sent you guys information as a chair, or has that happened?
No.
Okay, so after this next meeting that we have, I will forward you guys a copy of the PowerPoint presentation so you can see some of the recommendations. You kind of already know some of them. I've talked to you about them, but you'll see kind of what was presented to the stakeholder group. And then I'll let you know when it goes to the historic commission, so you guys can come to that meeting if you'd like to. And then, planning commission and mayor council, I'll let you know that too. But that's really the only update I have.
I have a question, since you know the material. Was one of the recommendations that they eliminate the advisory boards for the districts?
It was it's something that we had discussed, and it was more like roll the advisory boards to the commission. So there would be a representative from the advisory board on the commission. So the neighborhood, the historic preservation, nothing's being proposed with the historic preservation zone. Those stay. Nothing's being proposed with the design guidelines. Those stay. What is being proposed with the design guidelines is that right now, when you look in the code, you have the design guidelines that are done by the neighborhoods. You have the design guidelines that are kind of partially spelled out in the Uniform Development Code. And then you have like design guidelines that are also in the technical standards manual, is to kind of combine everything so that you're not looking in multiple places for that information, that you're looking in one place for that information. So like everything kind of gets dropped into the technical standards manual, including the neighborhood design guidelines. So it's all kind of in one spot instead of multiple spots.
It's just
But
going to be
the
one
intent-
size fits all.
No. I mean, you would still have like a section for Barrio. You'd still have a section for Armory Park and stuff like that. It's more about having it just located in one section. So you're not constantly flipping pages to figure out stuff. It's all in one area. Really, it's more just about moving it. But yeah, it is, we had talked about the advisory boards being rolled into the commission or the plans review subcommittee. So there'd be a member that would represent each HPZ, and then the HPZs can have their own like architectural group that would review plans. So we would notice, I mean, this is still kind of in the works, and obviously it may get approved, it may not get approved. It's what mayor and council does. But the neighborhood could have an architectural group that would review plans like 2 some odd weeks out. They would then notify their rep. The rep would be the one who would be a voting member of the commission plans review subcommittee on that project. And then the neighborhood people like you or anybody else, neighbors, whatever, could show up to the PRS meeting and also provide public comment about they're opposed or they support or whatever. But it would be a rep there. But yes, that is part of the recommendations.
Interesting.
And whether or not it gets approved, then who knows?
Jody, just out of curiosity, what time are those held, the PRS meetings?
The PRS meetings, they're held on the 2nd and the 4th Thursday of each month at 1 p.m. Although it gets a little wonky with the holidays, you know, whenever like Christmas and Thanksgiving, those holidays. But the full commission meetings, which is where the presentation would ultimately be, if it's during a full commission meeting, it would be on the 2nd Wednesday of the month at noon. But for the work session, there's probably going to be a special meeting for that. The work session on the separation, there would be potentially a special meeting for that.
Got it. Thank you.
And that has yet to be determined.
Okay, would someone like to, anybody else got questions, comments? Shall we make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, aye.
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 Okay,
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate
Thank
your
you.
participation. Have a good week, good evening.
Okay.
too.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.